39 seconds to eternity. The F-15I strike on Sanaa. On May 3, 2025, a combat operation took place that will undoubtedly go down in military history. 4 heavy Israeli F-15I Ra'am fighter jets flew more than 1,500 kilometers, roughly 930 miles, most of the route at an altitude of just 150 to 200 feet, around 45 to 60 meters. They flew with navigation lights off and total radio silence and struck the Sanaa airport in Yemen with precision-guided missiles. That airport had become a hub for Iranian Shahed drones. In this video, we break down the details of the operation second by second, including its nearly catastrophic ending as the jets were exiting the strike zone. 2 SA-6 surface-to-air missiles were launched at them. The onboard systems calculated it instantly. Those missiles would reach them in just 39 seconds. That's all the time the pilots had to either save themselves or die a heroic death. The countdown had begun. Flying in radar shadows. The mission began in complete darkness from Houthi Air Base near Be'er Sheva in southern Israel and continued into even deeper darkness over the Red Sea. Not a single word was spoken over the radio, not a single stray signal. Just the low roar of engines dissolving into the black surface of the sea. The F-15I skimmed the water at just 290 feet, about 60 meters, barely above the waves. At a speed of 800 feet per second, flying that low leaves zero room for error. A slight tremble of the pilot's hand on the stick, and the Ra'am, which translates from Hebrew as thunder, would slam into the water in less than 0.2 of a second, vanishing into spray, leaving only debris for the crabs of the Red Sea. After 5 minutes, the formation turned near Tiran Island, continuing along Egypt's eastern coastline where the real danger began. All non-essential systems were shut down. Only the systems necessary for flight and stealth were operating. The pilot's helmets, equipped with Elbit 4 systems, projected a heads-up display directly onto a transparent visor showing terrain, radar detection zones, and the tactical environment condensed into a glowing green layer right in front of their eyes. They couldn't afford to glance at the instruments. At such a low altitude, even a momentary distraction could be fatal. At 2 hours 27 minutes, the lead jet briefly throttled up twice, sending 2 short bursts of afterburner flame out the nozzles, a silent signal in the Israeli Air Force meaning formation adjustment when radio silence must be maintained. As pre-planned, all 4 jets dropped from 200 to 150 feet, the absolute minimum to stay beneath potential radar coverage. The IDF General Staff had assessed that at any moment an early warning radar in Sudan could come online. For the next 260 miles, about 420 kilometers, they would have to remain at ultra-low altitude, effectively slipping under enemy radar beams, remaining invisible. No traces, just the faintest white splashes in the sea behind them. No radar picked them up. No one along Egypt's coastline reported strange aircraft. The Israeli strike group had disappeared into the radar shadow. F-15I and the technology of precision strikes. They still didn't exist on radar screens, but in reality, just dozens of feet above the sea, 4 warplanes carried the most advanced strike capabilities of the Israeli Air Force. The F-15I Ra'am is a heavily modified version of the American F-15E Strike Eagle, tailored specifically for long-range missions. Israel didn't just adapt this aircraft, it turned it into a fully autonomous hunter, capable of operating independently. One of the most distinct features is the sleek conformal fuel tanks along the fuselage. These tanks extend range by hundreds of kilometers without significantly increasing radar cross-section. Unlike traditional external drop tanks, they don't give away the aircraft's position prematurely. These tanks were now enabling the Ra'am jets to fly at low altitude and avoid mid-air refueling, keeping them out of radar detection zones longer. Without them, the jets would have had to sacrifice weapons payload for fuel. The pilots wore helmets equipped with the Elbit 4 system, which projected terrain contours, radar zones, and target data directly onto the visor. This system eliminates the need to look down at instruments, updating visuals every 40 milliseconds. Diverting the eyes from the flight path, even for a split second, could be a death sentence. Technology, discipline, and precise calculations together, these transformed the F-15I from a mere warplane into a surgical strike tool. Mid-air refueling. At 2:39, with about 290 miles, 470 kilometers behind them, the jets exited the coverage zones of Egyptian and Sudanese radars. They had not yet entered the detection range of Yemeni or Iranian radar systems. Below them lay international waters south of Port Sudan. It was the ideal moment to refuel. At 24,000 feet, approximately 7,300 meters, a KC-707 was already in place, waiting. This large and heavy aircraft, based on the Boeing 707 airframe, had been retrofitted with several massive fuel tanks. Known informally among pilots as the milk cow, it hovered precisely at a prearranged point designated Syrup 6. There were no radio transmissions, just silence, known coordinates, and anticipation. The F-15Is took turns approaching from below. The tanker's refueling boom, stabilized with active controls, was already extended. A mechanical click, and in 3 minutes, 5 tons of fuel were transferred into the Ra'am. One jet detached, the next one slipped into position. Click. Another 3 minutes, the operation was repeated twice more. No words, no acknowledgments. Communication at this stage could be lethal. Just a faint shudder of the 100-ton tanker as each fighter disconnected. Without this refueling, the Ra'am fighters could have reached their target only with empty pylons. Now, under their wings, 4 sleek, angular Rampage missiles were mounted, 2 per wing, ready to be launched the moment the command was given. First radar signals. The enemy awakens. At 2 hours 53 minutes, with a little more than 230 miles, about 200 kilometers remaining to the Yemeni coast, warning signals lit up in the cockpits of the F-15Is. This was what the pilots had expected and what they feared. The first electronic ping was brief and pulsing. Then it came again, stronger. The onboard computer identified the source, a Soviet-made spoon rest radar delivered by Iran and operated by Houthi forces. It was commonly used for early detection of medium-altitude targets. The aircraft instantly dropped lower, hugging the terrain to avoid detection. 10 seconds later, another signal appeared. This one was broader, a rotating radar sweep, possibly a P-19, maybe a YC-6M. The enemy's air defense network was coming online. It was time to move into the next phase, active electronic countermeasures. The lead pilot reached down and turned the selector switch, activating the ELL-8222 jamming pod mounted on this centerline pylon. It hissed, buzzed, and began emitting targeted interference across the precise radar frequency bands, flooding enemy radar screens with electronic noise. The radar displays on the Houthi side were instantly filled with static and ghost signals. Target acquisition became impossible. 3 seconds later, the second jammer came online, mounted on the jet flying behind, then another, and another. On Houthi radar screens, chaos unfolded, phantom targets blinking in and out of existence, changing altitude, speed, and direction at random. They had engaged active jamming across the X-band frequencies used by both the Spoon Rest and YC-6M. Even if the Houthis fired, they would be shooting at ghosts and illusions. Approach and strike on Sanaa. 3 hours, 6 minutes. A dark ridge of hills appeared on the horizon. Behind it lay Sanaa. The fighters cleared the last line of terrain. Beyond that, open ground. There was no more cover. From this point on, they were exposed and visible. That meant one thing: maximum speed. Hands pushed the throttles forward, unleashing the full force of the Ra'am engines. Airspeed climbed to 550 miles per hour, nearly 900 kilometers per hour. The visors on the pilots' helmets flashed with red markers, kill zones, air defense coverage, control points. 12 miles ahead, roughly 20 kilometers, Sanaa International Airport came into view, a massive dark shape in the desert night. Satellite imagery from 12 hours earlier had confirmed 6 trucks loaded with Shahed 136 drones, 4 mobile radars, and possibly a command post. In the rear seats, there was silence and absolute focus. The weapons officers leaned over their consoles. Target coordinates were already programmed. All that remained was to select the strike profile. A steep dive, ensuring that each warhead, 330 pounds or 150 kilograms of high explosive, would slam into the roof of the hangar at 1,100 miles per hour, 1,800 kilometers an hour. A soft click armed the missiles. At 3 hours 7 minutes, the lead pilot gave a short command: weapons free. Switches clicked in unison, unlocking the weapons. A few seconds later, the radio crackled. Fire! The first missile detached from the pylon, followed by the second, third, and fourth. In the black sky, bright flashes erupted as missiles from the other jets joined the strike. Within 6 seconds, 16 Rampage missiles were on their way, traveling at over 1.5 times the speed of sound. 28 seconds after launch, the first missile hit its target. 3 hours, 8 minutes. A direct strike on the fuel depot. 3 seconds later, a massive explosion tore through a drone hangar. Another blast followed, destroying a second Shahed storage unit. And finally, a clean hit on the command center. Secondary detonations erupted across the airfield. Trucks ignited, roofs collapsed, a communications antenna toppled. The jets executed a sharp turn. The mission was almost complete. Almost. SA-6, 39 seconds to eternity. 3 hours, 10 minutes. The jets began climbing. The strike was executed. The targets were destroyed. But the mission wasn't over. They still had to make it back. No successful strike could ever justify the loss of even a single F-15I Ra'am, and certainly not the life of a pilot. Suddenly, a warning blared through the cockpits. The onboard computer had locked onto the threat of 2 SA-6 Gainful missiles, NATO's designation for the Soviet 2K-12 Kub surface-to-air missile system. Despite its age, the system was developed in the 1960s, it remained a deadly opponent. With a top speed of Mach 2.8, it posed a serious danger. The flight computer calmly displayed the verdict: distance 20 miles, 32 kilometers. Time to impact 39 seconds. Descending wasn't an option. There was no cover below anymore. There was only one move left: up. The plan was to climb steeply and hope the ground-based tracking radar would lose its lock, blinding the missiles. If that failed, there was only time for a silent prayer that God would accept their souls. 4 throttle levers were slammed forward. One more push. There was a heavy mechanical click, and the engines howled as afterburners roared to life. Columns of fire blasted from the nozzles as the F-15s rocketed upward at a 60-degree angle, as if kicked into the sky. Fragments tore off into the air chaff bundles launched by pyrotechnics streaked behind them. The electronic countermeasure systems were active, jamming at full force. G-forces crushed the pilots into their seats. Heartbeats pounded. Everything was at the limit, raw power and desperate calculation. The coastline was fast approaching, but the missiles were still gaining. The gap had closed to a kilometer, just 3 seconds of flight time. But they didn't need to fly that far. The proximity fuses would detonate at 150 to 300 feet, 50 to 100 meters from the aircraft. 200 pounds, roughly 90 kilograms, of high explosive would hurl thousands of lethal fragments, shredding both jet and pilot. 2 seconds to go. And on to the 38th second of pursuit, the tracking radar lost its lock. The 39th second never came. The missiles veered off sharply, arced wide, and detonated harmlessly several kilometers away. The Ra'am jets kept flying. 3 hours, 15 minutes. Yemeni airspace was behind them. The F-15Is were once again above the Red Sea, now cruising at 12,000 feet, around 3,600 meters. Ahead lay Israel. Ahead lay Hatzarim. The mission was complete. The only losses were flight suits soaked in the sweat of mortal danger worn by 4 Israeli airmen. Losses that could be accepted. Thank you for watching. We'd appreciate a like and a subscription to the channel. See you again soon.